I actually always wanted to be a lobbyist when I grew up.
It's like this guy is completely clueless of how the world
Bro,
works.
I'm telling
He's
you,
just got like one feed.
How can you look at how small his head is? Look at these books next to him in relevance to his head, right? All right, you cannot tell me this is two children standing on each other's shoulders in a coat. You cannot convince me. All right.
This is the U.S. intelligence agency, mind control.
Wait till you see who is on these shows.
Mm-hmm.
See it
Is
first. On
Max
Rumble.
Blumenthal?
Mate, we wanted to talk to you actually about the expansion of NATO. Finland
Oh, boy, here
recently
we go.
joining NATO, and also the sort of broad framing of NATO as a force for good in the world. And if you wouldn't mind tying that all into the sort of current.
All right,
Is
congratulations,
NATO
Russell
interpreted-
Brand. You have officially woken me up.
Is NATO interpreted as a force for good? Discuss.
As of right now,
No.
Yeah. As of this very moment, yes. Historically, it's iffy. Kind of nuts how like Russia basically gave NATO, I feel like, relevance again.
Yeah. They
Like,
were
it
they were talking about how it's ancient, it needs to go away.
Yeah.
Putin is NATO's biggest salesman.
Show trial of Donald Trump, and how the exaggeration of these misdemeanors into felonies is a convenient way to maintain a convenient framing of American politics at a time when perhaps we could be looking at more important geopolitical issues.
Well, nobody cares about geopolitical issues. That's why we have a show on it, because we're doing what nobody else wants to do. We're not going to let these snakes get away with this anymore.
Exactly.
Somebody's got to do something.
Somebody's got to do it
right now.
Well, the indictment of Trump ties into issues like the expansion of NATO, because back when Trump first broke into the political scene in 2015, 2016,
so he's had Max Blumenthal,
one of the things that he was saying that really freaked.
Oh, he brings these guys on all the time. Wait till you see who the next person is. You'll lose your shit.
He's literally a part of the main disinformation network from Russia. Like, he is one of the dissemination points.
Yeah, well, we know that for him for sure. But is Russell aware that, or is Russell too dumb?
This is what I can't figure out.
Does Russell know, or is he that stupid?
That's what I meant. Like, I can't figure out whether he's done it willingly or he's just a useful idiot for them. I can't figure it out.
Also, like, Russell's going to Rumble and all this stuff. He's clearly found out how easy it is to go down this road, and how it just
has Russell ever appeared on RT? I feel like he has.
No, I don't think so.
All right.
Freaked out the political establishment in the U.S. and other NATO states like the UK was that he was questioning the existence of NATO, and people couldn't believe someone could possibly, in the political spectrum, say such a thing. And I think that was one of the factors in all this freak out about Trump and all the motivation to then paint him as a Russian agent, is because he was actually saying things that you're not supposed to say inside of respectable NATO state politics. And
it had nothing to do with NATO, you fucking flog.
What's he talking about?
He's saying that Trump was saying that Russia was fine and opening trade, and all of that is why they were saying that he was Russian agent when it had nothing to do with it. What a crock of shit that is.
I mean, look who it's coming from.
I know.
See, now,
it's
in the real world,
it's a perfect representation of exactly what he does. He makes up these like ridiculous stories that normal people won't believe, but the people who like Trump will be like, "Oh yeah, that's true. It's a setup. And it was all about NATO. We heard it from Russell Brand."
I don't understand.
NATO's evil.
Where are they getting what is this pipeline though? Like, Trump has to do with like NATO expansion?
No, they're saying that Trump threatened NATO expansion by talking to Russia. That's what they're saying.
Oh,
which is such a dumb fucking.
Well, hang on. Let's let him. Hang on. Maybe it's so confusing to me because they haven't gotten their point together yet. Let him
Is that what we're saying? We'll let them
the
cook?
result of NATO and this drive to expand it in this proxy war in Ukraine. The fact we're having this war now is an outgrowth of a 3-decade-long policy of pushing NATO to Russia's borders, trying to bring in states like Ukraine and Georgia.
Was it?
And doing so in despite
sovereign states, freedom of association. If Russia wasn't such an aggressive asshole in the area, people wouldn't go to NATO and there'd be no NATO expansion. It's as simple as that.
Did you know that they actually tried to not expand? They literally were trying not to expand, and Poland forced their way in.
And then Poland met all the criteria and was like, fucking let us in.
Poland literally forced themselves in.
That's hilarious.
Like they made it so we didn't have a choice.
That's so funny.
And then they left the door open, and then
that basically sums up Poland's foreign policy, like since the end of the Cold War. Just fucking. But
fuck Russia.
Like they're just like, fuck Russia. We want to fight Russia so fucking bad right now.
It's because they're the only one left. The Soviets were the only ones left from World War II that fucked them. So that's the only way they could really get revenge.
They've also, but I mean, Putin has he's created, to put in simple terms, he's created like the supply and demand for NATO.
Of course he has. Yeah,
like
100%.
Going back to
to Chechnya,
2008 in Georgia, and even Chechnya, yeah.
Further back, and Georgia especially, because Georgia is very interesting, and John showed me this, was that the same playbook for the invasion was used in Georgia as it was in Ukraine. But I've been doing a bit of digging as well, and it turns out that
what's crazy about the war in Georgia is that a lot of analysts at the time and people who were involved in military strategy were saying the same things about like Russia's military as they are in Ukraine today, that it appears a lot weaker than we thought, and it was like a paper tiger and all of this, which I just find interesting because I was 7 at the time, so I had no idea.
But yeah, so they but I've been doing a little bit of digging, and it turns out that the same time as the Euromaidan, that Russia was trying to run an influence campaign in the Donbass regions, and the locals basically rejected him, said, fuck off, we don't want to, and then he shipped in neo-Nazis to try and sort of feign this separatist movement in these regions, which formed Azov, who then moved down to, I think, the coast, I believe.
Right.
And then now we've got this narrative about Nazis, and that's how they got in, right? They launched these separatist movements, right? They bust them in. They say that we've got Russians in the area, they're getting attacked, and then they're like, we need to invade to protect them. This time they used the Nazis.
There was always Nazis there, though.
No, I know.
That's the thing, is that the as far as like political power, they've lost power politically. But now the more dangerous thing is that it's beyond Nazis, It's because that's the thing. This is when we talk about confederalism and how it's the evolution of socialism, right? Accelerationism is the evolution of Nazism.
Yeah.
That's because when you look at neo-Nazis, who are supposed to be the next iteration of Nazism, at the end line of that, you have the accelerationists.
Yeah.
And also, accelerationists can come from all different backgrounds.
They sure can. But yeah, it's a whole sort of network that this idea that it's NATO's fault that there was a coup is all just a cope for the fact that Russia was running influence campaigns since 2014, since they took Crimea, and they've been there the whole time. Well, that whole fighting in Donbass was all against Russian
was about
agents.
The EU, not NATO.
Yes, it had nothing to do with NATO.
Nobody there really cared about NATO at all.
It had nothing to do with it. And now this bullshit about NATO. And what happens when he invades Ukraine? Finland and Sweden joined NATO. Well, I think we just saw why NATO's expanding in real time.
Yeah.
It's dumb. Anyway, continue.
Doing so despite pledges to the Soviet Union at the end of the Cold War that we're not going to expand.
When?
Never happened.
NATO one more inch to the east, and that's been violated, and that's a major reason why we have this war today. So Finland joining the club is just one more provocation. It's not to me as serious as the attempt to bring Ukraine in, because Ukraine has an actual historical tie to Russia. There are millions of people inside Ukraine who consider themselves to be ethnic Russians. Parts of Ukraine used to be a part of Russia. And Russian officials have long warned that any attempt to bring Ukraine into NATO would put Russia in a bad position, because basically, as William Burns, the then ambassador to the U.S., wrote back in 2008, if Ukraine joins NATO, Russia feared that would trigger a civil war, and that would force Russia to intervene on the side of people who support Russia. And that's pretty much what has happened. And
Ukraine is a sovereign country. Russia NATO, has no right.
Is something Russia is too concerned about, but certainly expanding NATO's borders to Russia does increase the tensions. And the idea that NATO is supposed to be defensive is just, as you've talked about, is a joke. I mean, look at its recent record: destroying Libya, invading Afghanistan.
Wow. Great job citing that record, buddy.
Notes.
You got 2.
He admitted it. He fucking admitted it.
Oh my god! Every single word of that was complete horseshit.
Except the little end part there.
Complete garbage.
What was Libya NATO or UN?
The track record is bad.
It was UN, was it not?
And also France,
but I think they're right this time.
France also, they don't give authorization to NATO for their military forces. So France is, even though they train with NATO, they're technically independent militarily from NATO. And France is the one who did the most there.
The article that triggers the mutual defense is actually optional. So,
well, I'm saying that's the thing, because we looked it up, because I was like, isn't France like not part of NATO? They're like in between, and it's because when they won't fall under NATO command. So
because they have nuclear weapons, I think.
It's whenever they have combined forces, France will still act independently.
Which I think that's good.
I think NATO did go into Afghanistan, but also America was attacked. It's a NATO member. So, but the thing is like, sure, Afghanistan didn't launch the attack. It was Osama bin Laden, but what are you going to do?
Like the excuse was that they were harboring him.
I mean, they were.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Whether that's justification for an invasion or not, that's up for debate. But yeah.
I mean, I would say that it's justification to trigger something in NATO, and then the debate is if the invasion is ethical from there.
Destroying Yugoslavia and turning that into separate states. I mean, that's the real nature of NATO. And the idea that it's there to...
I can't even unpause. I can't even unpause this guy.
Did he just say that NATO divided Yugoslavia?
I didn't realize, my bad guys, I didn't realize he was talking about NATO. I thought he was talking about Russia when he was talking about like Libya and all.
Oh my god!
What do you said? Like, well, we know what. Go back for a second. I could have sworn he said when he was talking about Libya and what was the other place he was talking about?
Talking about NATO.
Oh, of course he was. Never mind. I gave you too much credit.
Protect people is just completely undermined by its own record.
They have an explicit relationship with the military-industrial complex. Is there any evidence that they are involved in the brokerage of arms deals, that they facilitate it, that an expansion?
Russell Brand, question asker master. Like, you can tell he was not listening.
Not a leading question at all.
Bro, watch. You can tell Russell wasn't listening.
Real nature of NATO. And the idea that it's there to protect people is just completely undermined by its own record.
Hit the pause button. Just that question, like, NATO's a military force, right? They're a military alliance. Wouldn't the brokerage of weapons just like be like a given?
Well,
yes.
I think the thing is, the issue here is that they would have a point if they were pointing to Turkey and ISIS and Turkey and Azerbaijan.
That's like a water filter company selling ice. Like, that's just a given.
But like I said, Turkey with ISIS, if they were making a point, that's where they should be making it.
They like
Turkey. They're not going to make that point because they're stupid.
Turkey, they're authoritarians.
Azerbaijan love getting weapons from Turkey, They're not, but they're never going to point over there. All right, here we go.
doesn't give a fuck about that.
Russell Brand not paying attention because Russell Brand has heard this every fucking day for how long now?
He says this all day, every day.
Yeah, so he's tuning this guy out.
Yeah.
They have an explicit relationship with the military-industrial complex. Is there any evidence that they are involved in the brokerage of arms deals, that they facilitate?
He's struggling.
He's looking up because he's thinking. Because he had nothing prepared. It's a tell.
He talks like how I thought British people talked when I was 5. Like, I can't take them. I know I say this a lot, but there's sometimes I just can't take certain people seriously. It's like,
I want to know why Aaron chose this framing to make him look like a small boy.
Expansion of NATO somehow leads to the expansion of the military-industrial complex, and also, Aaron, I just say that is fascinating. When Trump, who I'm not broadly speaking he's not something
Hey, bro, hear me out. Reptilian.
he looks like Mark Zuckerberg.
Bro, he does.
Blithely support. I enjoy him as an establishment wrecking ball, I do have to say. But when he sort of mentions something like, don't have to be in NATO, there's something that I enjoy about that kind of anarchic and sort of outsider perspective. So
he called it anarchic.
NATO's relationship with the military-industrial complex and the possibility of disbanding NATO.
Yeah, well, on Trump, I mean, that's why elites.
Did you see him lay back? He's totally not listening at all.
Well, he's just trying to reposition the conversation.
Not because he's actually really a threat to their agenda, but sometimes he blurts out the wrong things. So he'll question the existence of NATO, while still policy-wise, he encouraged NATO states to spend more on the military-industrial complex. So policy-wise, he pretty much continued the NATO agenda, but sometimes, occasionally, he'll speak the truth. And he'll say the wrong things. Also, in Syria, for example, when he announced that U.S. troops were staying.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Here we go.
After he initially tried to withdraw them, he said we're staying to take the oil. And you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to say we're there to fight terrorism.
He did say that.
I forgot about that. That's funny as.
But then he gives fucking Kirkuk to Qasem Soleimani, which is an infinitely more important oil field.
Such a W.
Dude, he's so stupid.
Someone start playing Crab Rave. We mentioned the death of Qasem Soleimani. Mandatory.
And spread democracy. So that's why they don't like him. And that's why there's constantly attempts to undermine him. Not because he's actual policy-wise, he's a threat to, the conventional agenda, but because sometimes he just speaks out of turn. And yes, in terms of NATO's relationship with the military-industrial complex, if you look at the multiple rounds of NATO expansion, and how that's been received in the U.S. Congress, which has to vote to approve these expansions. Every time that happens, there's a massive influx of lobbying money by the military-industrial complex in support of NATO expansion, because the military-industrial complex recognizes that NATO expansion is hugely profitable for them. Back in the 1990s, there was a lobby group in the U.S. called the Committee to Expand NATO or something like that. And it was headed by a guy named Bruce Jackson. But that wasn't Bruce Jackson's only job. Bruce Jackson's day job was that he was a vice.
Oh, lobbyist isn't his full-time job? I didn't know lobbyists had other jobs.
I actually always wanted to be a lobbyist when I grew up.
It's like this guy is completely clueless of how the world
works.
Bro,
I'm telling you,
he's just got like one feed.
How can you look at how small his head is? Look at these books next to him in relevance to his head, right? All right. You cannot tell me this is two children standing on each other's shoulders in a coat. You cannot convince me. All right. Look at him.
Yeah, he doesn't really have
president.
I know, but he's not, and the way he's framing himself too.
But you got to know he reads books. Like that's
that's standard. That's your standard background is books. Like if you have books, that's what should be behind you. Everyone knows this. Watch any interview with any news thing, and there would be books behind somebody, because that's what you have to have.
Books.
Make it any less true.
Yeah, your background is horrific, Jack.
Don't even get me started.
At Lockheed Martin. So he recognized that expanding NATO was very good for Lockheed Martin. So yes, I mean, because if you expand NATO, you have to your military has to be up to NATO standards, which means spending billions and billions of dollars on weapons. So there is a huge connection there. And that's why Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, he's not really a general of anything. He doesn't have a military role. He's just basically an arms dealer. He's an arms lobbyist. That's what he is. He's there to sell the public on the need to spend more money on weapons.
Aaron, Russia arrested that Wall Street Journal reporter, Evan Gershkovich, and the Biden administration are up in arms saying you can't just arrest journalists and put them in prison without trial. What do you think? You can't just use the Espionage Act as a catch-all way of arresting people with dissident voices that you don't agree with or approve of. What do you make of that while dear old Julian Assange is banged up in Belmarsh here in Blighty and dear
How the
Edward...
fuck did he transition
What is he
to that?
saying?
What the
What
fuck
is he
just
saying?
happened?
What is he banged up? Blah.
Is he back on drugs?
Belmarsh, Julian Assange. Is Julian Assange a common talking point of his? Do you guys know this?
Yeah,
yes.
a little bit.
It's all. That's what we were talking about. What I was telling Tanya is that you're eventually going to form an opinion around Julian Assange because of how important he is for information warfare. He is one of the core sticking points. When
he's their like tool to say, see, we still care about like actual liberty kind of thing.
Bro,
when
Navalny was poisoned, they were like, what about Julian Assange?
It's always the deflect.
It's insane. It's so deep. And Assange was like critical for my career, like being an anti-American is like, as I was writing, like WikiLeaks was extremely important. And like, I was like most active when WikiLeaks was at its height. But at the same time, it's like, when is he ever posting shit that's like not in America or not in Russia's interest, And like, also like these leaks that are out right now, like there's also like, and I think this is counter information warfare where they're trying to say that the leaks have like that they're fake and they're like supposed to be something to like trick Russia. Like
the ones that just got leaked.
Yeah, and they came from like tradcasts.
I don't know what that is.
Traditional Catholics. They're like Protestants but Catholic.
So we can start killing the Protestants.
No, Michael, that's not what this is about.
But Snowden abides in exile in Russia. Is there some hypocrisy there?
Did you see Biden?
I mean, yes. I mean, I think this arrest of this Wall Street Journal happened just as Assange marked 1,000 days inside Belmarsh, this maximum security gulag inside Britain. And that was on top of all the years he spent locked up in the Ecuadorian embassy because he couldn't leave or else he would be put in prison then.
I was waiting to let him finish. I was like, you have to say he can leave or else, like you got to finish that line. He was free to go at any time. He would just be arrested if he did. But, this is what they say about bin Laden. It was a prison of his own design. He imprisoned himself. I mean, who knows? He probably could have been out right now.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because I don't think the charges would have stuck either way. So he's kind of done it to himself a little bit, but it still doesn't account for like how absurd the charges are and all that sort of shit, though. Like the way the threats from states, multiple different states, is just unacceptable.
It's also very interesting when the United States decides enough is enough, and you can see they're starting to turn on him because like they're able to like obviously a lot of the charges are ridiculous on him, and like at worst he's just like an enemy spy, like how much do they get in prison?
Yeah.
What happened to Benedict Arnold?
I have no idea.
Oh man, none of you are American, so you have no idea.
Hanged. He was hanged, right?
Was he hanged?
I think so.
But the other thing,
yes, of course, it's massively hypocritical.
The other thing is that Australia, right, done nothing, just nothing. They could bring him back and just be like, piss off. but they don't ever. They don't care. They're just sort of letting him rot. He's from fucking round the corner. Fucking cheeky cunt.
He is like Swedish or something, but it says right here.
I know that guy.
Townsville, Australia.
They born in Queensland,
I used to see him at the
Melbourne,
convenience store before he started doing all those leaks.
Pretty interesting. Continue.
It's a joke to see NATO state leaders in the U.S. and U.K. and elsewhere complain about the arrest of this Wall Street Journal reporter. And it's just like, I can't even think about Assange sometimes. It's so depressing. I don't know how you feel about it, but it's so depressing.
It's like I have to try and think there must be something I'm not understanding about this, because otherwise it shows that aside from aesthetics, we do live in a kind of banalized tyranny, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to put journalists in prison without trial and claim it was somehow legitimate.
So Julian Assange, isn't he going to be put on trial?
Look what I just found.
What I was Googling it. I can't. We're not. It's going to be reversed here to us.
Whatever. It says dozens of Australian politicians urge US to abandon Julian Assange extradition. How interesting.
Yeah, and also I was saying that he might. It said he could serve, even if he's sentenced in the US, he can be able to do the sentence in Australia.
Interesting. So it says 48 MPs and senators signed this open letter.
Does he even have a trial?
I'm not
sure. The last
sure.
thing I saw was June 17th, 2022, and it's like, will he be extradited?
Says they're referencing Chelsea Manning, who had the sentence commuted, which is precedent for it, right? Doesn't
Chelsea Manning is like the least familiar I am of these three like whistleblowers. We'll call them like Assange.
Well, she's also clearly not like a Russian agent.
Yes,
that's my basic.
But she leaked her documents because people weren't accepting of her. You know, like because of how the military culture was.
Yeah, that was kind of my understanding of the whole thing. Is the reason she got off a little easier was because, it didn't seem like
she also didn't hide.
No, she didn't. She was in the Marines, correct?
I'm not sure. I just know she was
she was U.S. Army. She was a U.S. Army analyst, I believe.
I thought she was like a drone operator, like a drone analyst or something.
I thought
yeah,
she was
something like that.
Like she analyzed targets for drone strikes. I don't know. Who cares? She's got a book, though. Read it, I guess.
I might guess.
Yeah, I went to see Julian Assange when he was in that embassy. He later described that in his diaries as the worst day of his incarceration. So is it? I'm in touch with Julian Assange's wife, and I feel like it's. In a way, I hold on to the idea of Assange and Snowden when I'm attacked for being far right or a conspiracy theorist, because they're kind of the ace, aren't they? They're dual aces in the pack. Right? Your liberal, righteous agenda, what is it doing about this, and why can't it address it? It's kind of a Vulcan death grip on their bullshit because they have to.
He basically. What is he talking about?
He's basically just admitting that it's his like go-to deflect card right now. It's like that's literally what he's doing. He's just admitting like, yeah, this is the shit I go to when people call me out on my bullshit.
He literally just talks nonsense. Like he talks so fast and so much shit and says all these special little buzzwords that gets people.
Nobody
interested.
Here is on the same page. He asked about Trump. He's talking about NATO expansion. He tries to bring it back to Trump.
This whole thing is a disaster.
Assange comes in.
Every question has been a pivot, and
bro, it's like when
one
like
of the
you put
shittest
like
interviewers.
You put like two Amazon Echoes next to each other, so they start talking to each other.
sort of go, oh, they have to sort of shut down the debate there. And that's when you know what the establishment is. So I suppose, aside from the sort of deep personal agony that they as a family and the individuals must be facing, I feel that they are sort of avatars of what the reality of our sort of deep state corruption is.
What?
Absolutely. I mean, no one in the world has done more to expose state crimes than Julian Assange. And for his services, rather than being given every journalistic award in the world, which he deserves, he's being caged in a gulag with no
He's not a journalist.
sign of him being able to get.
Well, but the thing, like
he's
I
a
said,
hacker.
Well, I wouldn't have my career without Assange. That
Yeah,
doesn't.
but-
But the thing is like obviously it was breaking the law. They knew they were breaking the law from the beginning. What did they think was going to happen?
I don't think so. I think there was a loophole where because they didn't steal the documents and they weren't helping to steal the documents, that they got out of it that way. So it wasn't technically illegal.
But
they
you know what? You know what changed
anyway.
it was the Hillary Clinton email stuff.
Yeah,
that's what changed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But yeah, I wouldn't consider it. I consider what he did journalistic, but I don't consider Julian Assange a journalist because he didn't do certain things that would qualify you to be a journalist.
He's not like a writer. He's just a hacker.
Yeah, he's just a leaker, right?
Hacker. He's a hacker.
No, he is a hacker, yes, but I'm saying that.
But that's what his job description was.
Yeah. So he wasn't necessarily a journalist, but what he was doing was journalistic.
Yeah,
so an important distinction.
Providing a resource.
Yes, exactly. It was a source. So it's just a very important distinction to make.
Get out. I think the plan from those torturing him and imprisoning him is just to hold him for as long as they can behind bars and hope he dies behind bars. That seems to be the plan. And the media in the U.S. especially is totally
sure your heart weeps for him.
No, I think Julian Assange's plan is for him to die behind bars. Like he's like
die as a martyr.
Yeah, I think so at this point. Like honestly, like because what would the United States gain out of that? Like even if he's been in jail and they give him like an exaggerated sentence, never commuted, and they just left him in a cell to rot, like what does the United States gain in that situation? What is the problem with the United States letting him go, but then like keeping him on a short leash where it's like he can't have access to computers and stuff?
Or just letting him go because who gives a shit?
Yeah,
don't do dodgy shit and be transparent and there's nothing to get exposed for. You fucking idiots.
Also,
it's very
simple. You know that he wouldn't be like this if he was doing the same thing to fucking Assad and Putin.
Yeah, he wouldn't be in this situation. He'd be allowed off.
Because like if he was doing actually like getting the information fairly, then it would be a different story.
Yeah, and like that would be. Well, it would be a different classification, but I also don't think the US would be so hard on him.
I don't think they'd care if he was a reliable source of foreign intelligence.
In this, there sometimes, establishment journals speak up in defense of Julian, but not nearly to the level that they should be. And they still run all these smear pieces that take part in the propaganda effort to demonize him. And so we're all just sitting by and watching it happen as, the most important journalist in I think in Western history is being murdered, tortured. It's just unbelievable. And so, yes, so what Russia has done to this Wall Street Journal reporter, by all accounts, it looks terrible. I do, though, have to question the wisdom of his editors who sent this reporter to a really sensitive Russian military-industrial complex site and asking questions of people. They must have known that this would arouse suspicion from Russian authorities and would possibly put this reporter in danger. So I hope, of course, that he's freed, immediately. But I do have to question the wisdom of whoever sent him to this really sensitive site to ask these questions, especially at a time.
Huh?
It was a nice save. You gotta make sure that you say that you want him free as well. realistically, he
Oh
doesn't.
yeah. No. They'll say that. They'll like the thing where they were like, where they sort of like, oh yeah, Navalny's real bad, but also don't forget Assange.
Yeah,
like, Assange is just.
It's always whataboutism. These people are whataboutism experts.
Of such high tensions between the U.S. and Russia, people are going to be used as pawns to negotiate for the release of other prisoners, and it looks like this Wall Street Journal reporter has gotten caught up in that.
That's exactly what I would say right at the end. That would be my analysis of it. Like, he's going to be a good pawn